Coming up on today's show, we're going to check out some competitive backups for the Cleveland Browns. Because whether or not you believe in Baker Mayfield for 2022, I think we can all agree that if Baker Mayfield does not get off to a good start, the Browns ought to take a serious look at looking at the backup quarterback. So we'll look at some backups that maybe could push Baker a little bit to the limits and provide some extra depth at that quarterback position just in case Baker either gets hurt again or Baker does not get off to a good start, and Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski don't want to just sit on their hands and let Baker have another bad season, which ultimately leads to the Browns missing the playoffs. Now, the first option is, of course, the current quarterback on the roster. It's the backup, Case Keenum. So we look at the numbers for Case Keenum here, and he's got an $8.5 just about $1 million cap hit, but just a $1.3 million dead cap hit. And what that means is the Browns can save whatever you subtract the cap hit from the dead cap. So about $7 million in savings if the Browns decide to move on from Keenum, and that's a lot of money. That's tempting right there if you're GM Andrew Berry to go, wow, we can save $7 million by cutting the backup quarterback and maybe getting a cheaper option on the open free agent market. Now, with that all being said, if you had to pick a quarterback between Baker Mayfield and Case Keenum, who would you pick? I still roll with Baker, but I'm not going to hate you for putting 5 for Case Keenum down below, because when Case Keenum was out there, like that start against the Broncos on Thursday Night Football, Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, not a bad deal. Not a bad game from Case Keenum. He's a pretty highly paid backup quarterback, so you're going to give him all that dough. You better get something out of him. But let's say Andrew Berry goes, no, I don't want to go with Case Keenum. I want to explore other options. Well, here are 5 names. We'll start with former Chicago Bears quarterback and now Buffalo Bills backup quarterback Mitchell Trubisky. Sat behind Josh Allen this past season. Maybe did some rehabbing. It's honestly interesting that Trubisky's name is so popular this offseason after not playing a full season than it was last year after playing the season before, that whole season. But we're talking about their second overall pick from the Chicago Bears back in 2017. So kind of like Baker, there's still this belief that, kind of like draft fallacy, well, he was picked so early. It's got to work. And I don't think Baker's a bust by any means, and I'm not going to get down that rabbit hole. But because he was picked first overall, the expectations are super high. And just like Trubisky, picked second overall, a lot of expectations for him. And when you go head-to-head between Mitch and Baker over their last 16 starts, the stats favor Trubisky. You just look at the numbers by themselves. Better completion percentage, more yards, more touchdowns. Sure, more interceptions, but just by 2. And a better rating overall. So head-to-head over their last 16 starts, the numbers favor Trubisky, but Mitch's inability to really read a defense and progress throughout his first to second to third read is what really did him in Chicago. And it's not like Baker Mayfield has been wowing offensive coordinators and coaches by his ability to read defenses and make his progressions. But I do think you've seen just enough greatness out of Baker, especially in that 2020 season down the stretch. There's enough like right there on the hook to keep you hooked on. With that all being said, though, do you think the Browns should sign Trubisky? You want Mitch to come in and be the backup and honestly have a bit of a more competition. It wasn't like there was much of a QB competition between Mitch and Josh Allen in Buffalo this past offseason, but I think there would be. If the Browns brought in Trubisky, I think you would have more of a competition between those two guys in Cleveland. Give me a Y for yes or an N for no. I think if you're looking at this through the lens of what Berry and Stefanski want, they want to win this season. They do not want to have back-to-back losing seasons and feel the temperature on their rear ends kick up a notch or two. And a good way to do that is have a good quarterback, because let's face it, it doesn't matter if you have anything else going for you. If you don't have the quarterback position down, everything else kind of goes to shit. We saw that this past season. Great defense at times, great run game other times, but it doesn't matter if the quarterback position is not rock solid. And so I don't think they want to roll the dice on Baker Mayfield and just let him be off on his own and have a rookie quarterback be his backup and just kind of punt on that position or that backup spot as a whole. Next QB option for the Browns would be Marcus Mariota, the also former second overall pick, just came to mind too. Back with the Tennessee Titans, and then spent the last 2 years doing some rehab in Vegas, trying to get his career back on track. Here's the thing with Mariota. He adds another element to your offense because of the red zone packages he can offer. He's very versatile with his legs, and sure, he can throw the ball a little bit here and there. The bigger issue, though, with Mariota is his inability to stay healthy, all right? The quad injuries, just the nagging injuries that have followed him throughout his career from Tennessee to Vegas has been what's really done him in. The other issue I have with Mariota is he doesn't have much experience doing what quarterbacks do the most, throwing the football. Look at the last 2 years. He's played in 11 games for the Raiders, and he's thrown a whopping 60% completion to get to 230 yards. I just don't know how comfortable I am bringing in a quarterback that has not thrown the football much at all in his last 2 seasons and say he's tossed into battle because Baker gets benched or Baker gets hurt, and now we have Mariota who hasn't actually thrown the football outside of practice for quite some time. And so that's kind of my biggest issue with Mariota. However, he would add another element to the offense with those red zone packages you could add to your playbook. Before we look at some other quarterbacks and talk a little bit about Mariota, if you have not subscribed to the channel, make sure you do so, and then comment me down below, and that way I can give you a shout out on the show. Listen, here at the Browns Report, it's all about interactiveness between myself and you guys watching. I want to make you guys a part, just as much as a part of the show as I am. So comment me, and I'll give you a shout out on a show on Monday or Tuesday, depending on how the news cycle and rumor mill is. So stay tuned for that. Hit that big red button and subscribe. Next QB option is Andy Dalton. This one is, I think we fall a little bit between Trubisky and Mariota to Dalton because I'm not really sure what the career trajectory is for Andy Dalton at this point. He was the starter for the Bears this past season, played in 8 games, and ultimately got hurt, and Justin Fields takes over. And, well, we know how Fields' first start went, right? That was a fun game for the Browns. Sacked him, 9 times? But Andy Dalton this past season for the Bears, not great. The Red Rocket was out of gas, and I don't know if his career is really on a path to have him continuing to play football. In fact, me and the Bears Now host here at Chat Sports, we're talking about Dalton. I kind of think Andy Dalton might hang it up, but if there's enough interest out there and a team has a backup get hurt in preseason or training camp, maybe they can wow Dalton out of retirement, get him out of Dallas, and get him up to Cleveland. I also do think Andy Dalton, though, is a pretty competitive guy. I mean, he was on a team that drafted a quarterback in the first round, and Dalton was still very much tooth and nail wanting to have the starting role despite being towards the end of his career. So if Dalton comes into Cleveland, I think he could really push Baker in that role for the starting job and really give him, I wouldn't say a run for his money necessarily, but he's not going to necessarily sit back a little bit like Case Keenum was, where Keenum knew what his job was, which was hold the playbook, have the headset on, and just look pretty on the sideline when the camera goes to you. We looked at 3 quarterbacks so far, so if you had to pick one, who would you pick? Just give me the initials of the QB you like the most down below. MT for Mitch, MM for Mariota, or AD for Andy Dalton. Let me know what you're thinking, and we'll go back and forth and see if we can come to a consensus on the number 1. 4th QB option is Jacoby Brissett. Patriots quarterback, Colts quarterback, and then this past year with the Dolphins. Made a couple starts when Tua got hurt and was really bad, honestly. It was not pretty for Jacoby Brissett. But here's the thing with Jacoby Brissett. He could be a relatively cheap option, actually, because the way he played this past season did not get him much of a reason to put up a lot of money in terms of what he'd be owed in a salary. And so I think the Browns could look at cutting Case Keenum, saving about $7 million, and then you roll with Brissett, who made just over $5 million this past season. So you could save some good money right there with Jacoby Brissett. And we'll talk more about him in just a second. But also first, how about this great deal going on at Fanatics? Look at this dope t-shirt. My producer, Trace, he's not a Browns guy. But he's like, honestly, this shirt's cool enough that I may just want to get it myself, especially when it's just $20. So go to chatsports.com/Browns t-shirt. I got that link for you in the comments and the description of the video. So check it out, chatsports.com/Browns t-shirt. Picking up where I left off, though, look at Brissett's numbers. This is what he did in 11 games this past season for the Dolphins. And it's tough to analyze these numbers because he was going in and out of the starting lineup going out back and forth with Tua when Tua was healthy or when Tua was hurt. So getting some first-team reps in practice, new playbook, new team. It's not really fair to judge Brissett in that regard, but he would be a cheap option in my opinion because he only made about $5 million this past season and didn't really play up to that number, so I think you could get him for a bargain. And if you're Andrew Berry and you want to squeeze much juice possible out of the numbers in the salary cap and allocate that to other positional needs, Brissett could be your guy. On the other hand, we have a different quarterback here, my fifth and final option, that is on the other end of the spectrum in terms of what he wants to make. Teddy Bridgewater, who just wrapped up basically a full season starting for the Broncos, made 14 starts in Denver, and was paid handsomely, and he's going to want to get a good amount of money this offseason, and I can't blame him for that. I mean, when you make 14 starts for a team and you don't do an awful job, 3,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, held on to the football, good completion percentage, he's going to look to go to a team that wants him to start. It won't pay him necessarily starting money, but somewhere in between. And that would make him a very expensive backup. But you never know. Maybe Andrew Berry just isn't in on Baker Mayfield after sitting and thinking about it throughout the offseason, and he wants to go with a more proven backup like Teddy Bridgewater. But, like I said, Teddy's going to want some cheddar. He's going to want some money. He's going to want some dough. And Baker Mayfield's making $18 million this season. Let's say Teddy Bridgewater wants $10 to $15 million. That's a lot of money for just two quarterbacks, and only one of them plays. So it would be a big decision. I can't really envision it happening. But at the end of the day, Barry doesn't want to go on the hot seat. And he doesn't want to get there by having bad quarterback play next season. So he'll do everything in his power to make the backup role as competitive, as affordable, as financially that makes sense. That way, if Baker shits the bed, gets hurt, he doesn't have to go to a backup he does not have faith in. He's going to go to a backup he paid a good amount of money to, whether that's Case Keenum or someone else. All right, last question I'm going to ask you guys on the show here. It's time to put your GM hat on. Be Andrew Berry. Who do you want the Browns to sign? I've looked at 5 names. Maybe I'm missing someone. You want to go like Cam Newton? I don't think Cam Newton has anything left in the tank, but maybe you want to go that route. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Ultimately, I think the Browns are going to stick with Case Keenum. I know I went through this whole charade of 5 options, but the savings you would have, $7 million, well, you'd also have to sign someone else. Let's say that someone else costs 5 to 6, right? Because you'd think they'd be cheaper. Well, is $1 million really worth lesser quarterback play? And maybe they're better than Case Keenum, but Keenum's been in Cleveland for a couple of years now, and he knows the playbook. He knows what Stefanski's trying to do, so you wouldn't have to work him up to speed. And when you saw Keenum this past season, I had no issues with him. I thought he was, he did his job in the Broncos game, and he held his own in the Bengals game. So I'm not too opposed to Case Keenum sticking around for the final year of his contract. That's going to do it for us here on the Cleveland Browns Report. We'll catch up with you guys later, and enjoy your weekend.